Hello, and welcome back to another episode of Money in Motion. I'm your host, Jordan Maxwell, a qualified financial planner based here in London. Now, if it's your first time here, just want to set the tone. What this series isn't is a deep dive into the latest investment trends or pretending there's some secret sauce to building long-term wealth. The whole point of this is simple: to help you build better money behaviors, to make smarter financial decisions, and actually move forward step by step toward a stronger financial future. Each episode is designed to be short, straight to the point, and give you something practical you can reflect on or act on immediately. So without further ado, let's jump into today's episode. Okay, let's get into it. So I want to talk about something today that honestly I see or have seen far too often. And it's the idea of getting rich quickly. Because on the surface, it sounds like a great idea. It sounds appealing, right? Fast money, big returns, minimal effort. And who wouldn't want that? But the reality is that most people who chase it will end up further away from where they were trying to get to in the first place. You know, I'm sure that we're all familiar with the term take one step back to take two steps forward. Well, in the case of getting rich quick, oftentimes it's one step forward, two steps back. You feel like you're doing something in the moment, feel good. There's a rush of dopamine that you're actually doing something productive with your money. But then when everything comes out in the wash, you're actually further back than when you started. And the reason I wanted to record this episode is because of a conversation I had recently. I was put in contact with a prospective client who wanted to get some help regarding making a gift to her grandchildren. She was expecting to receive the proceeds of an investment that she had made a few months prior, and she ultimately wanted to then gift the proceeds to her grandchildren that she was expecting to receive quite soon. And this individual was a teacher, very well educated individual, and unfortunately, having spoken to her for about an hour, it became evident pretty quickly to me there were a number of red flags regarding this particular investment that she had made. And it transpired that it was indeed a financial scam, in this case, a crypto scam. And unfortunately, this wasn't the first time. She wasn't a victim of just one crypto scam. This is the second time that she has fell victim to a get-rich-quick scheme like this. And in total, she has lost over £100,000 as a result. And when you hear that, I suppose the first reaction might be, how does that even happen? Right? Not once, but twice, this person has been subject or susceptible to a get-rich-quick scam. But I suppose that is the wrong question. The better question, I think, is why are we so susceptible to this in the first place? Because she's not alone, right? And it's definitely not about intelligence or anything like that. As I say, she was a very well-educated individual, and I'm sure people much smarter than her over the recent history have been susceptible to other financial scams as well. I think it's not necessarily to do with that. It's more so to do with psychology. You see, when someone is in a position where money feels tight, maybe a bit uncertain, not quite enough, there is this natural desire to accelerate things, of course, to skip some steps, to catch up. And that will naturally create urgency and vulnerability as a result. Because if you feel like you're behind, put yourself in her shoes. If you feel like you're behind, chances are you're far more likely to believe something that promises to move you forward quickly. It's only natural. And I think this is where get-rich-quick schemes thrive. This is where they live. You see, they don't just sell an opportunity, right? In this case, they wasn't selling this individual on the wonders of of crypto or how genius the blockchain technology is. What they and many like them sell is actually relief. It's relief from stress, maybe relief from embarrassment, from comparison, relief from feeling like you're not where you should be in life. And the tricky part is they're often wrapped in just enough credibility to feel real. If you look at their material, there's, jargon all over the place, maybe a success story. There's usually a sense of urgency. You hear terms like get in now, limited opportunity. People are already making money from this. You can too. And suddenly it feels less like a risk and more like something that you might miss out on if you don't jump into it now. Now I'm in a bit of a privileged position given my profession. But if we compare that to how wealth is actually built, real wealth, it's typically done slowly. Typically quite boring. If I use some of my clients as an example and look at how they made their wealth, it was done over many, many years, and usually in professions or methods or ways that were pretty boring if you looked at them. But that's the part no one really talks about, right? That's not the that's no. Who wants to hear about getting rich slowly? That's not cool. But the reality is that real wealth doesn't come from one decision. It comes from hundreds of small, consistent decisions made over a very long time. At least that's what the evidence has shown me. The people who have built wealth successfully, they understand this. Not because they're more intelligent. This isn't about being intelligent. If you speak to them, they're just regular people. It's just they know that real wealth is built slowly, methodically, boringly, because they themselves have done it. And they see get-rich-quick schemes for exactly what they are. It's not an opportunity, but it's actually a very big risk that's just been dressed up to look like one. And look, by no means am I telling you that you shouldn't take opportunities, right? You shouldn't try to grow your money or anything like that. I'm not saying that. Of course, that's the whole premise and point of this series. But there is a big difference between calculated decision and an emotional one. And most get-rich-quick decisions are driven by emotion, whether it be frustration, impatience, comparison, embarrassment, as I mentioned before, that feeling that you should be further along than you are. And if you aren't able to recognize that in the moment, you can end up making decisions that set you back years, if not decades. And I think this teacher that I was speaking to is a perfect example of that. So here's something to think about. Next time you come across an opportunity that sounds almost too good to be true, instead of asking, could this work? I'd like you to ask, what part of me wants this to work? Because that's usually where the answer is. I think, again, if we were to use this individual as an example, the part of her that wanted this to be true, wanted this to work, was the fact that ultimately the proceeds of this was going to her grandchildren. It's a very emotional and personal objective. And I think that's where the bad choice was made. And maybe she was a bit blinded because of that emotion. But, ultimately wealth isn't built by avoiding risk entirely. Again, I want to make that pretty clear. It's built around understanding which risks are simply worth taking and which ones are quietly working against you or designed to work against you. And something I want you to take from this episode is there's no need to rush the process. The more you try to force speed or acceleration into your financial journey, ironically, the more likely you are to make a decision that will slow you down. Don't be afraid to play the long game, even if it feels less exciting. And it will. It'll feel boring and mundane and long-winded. But that's how it actually works. That's how the game is played, and that's how real wealth is actually built. Okay, so if you found this useful, make sure you follow, subscribe, so you don't miss the next episode. And if you know someone who needs to hear this, maybe they're susceptible to the odd get-rich-quick scheme or two, share this with them. It could save them a lot of money and a lot of time. Okay, well, that's it for this episode. I will catch you in the next.